I don't have time for this.
No, don't.
See? Nothing.
Happy summer blockbusters, everybody. Welcome to Hold Up, the show where we dive deep inside your childhood nostalgia, pull the movies from your past out to see if they truly hold up. And this summer, I'm holed up with Andrew to my left and Kyle via the Subway Fresh Take Chat hotline.
Lucky you. You sound like you're living the dream, my dude.
I'm living it with Jared.
Yeah.
Holding hands. We're figuring some stuff out. We're going through it together, but we're going to get there.
I'm happy that you were taking the steps to making yourself and him a better person. The world needs it.
Unfortunately, they are steps away from playgrounds and swimming pools, but they're, nonetheless, steps.
We have to say one thing. We're not sponsored by Subway.
We can
Not
be.
yet.
We could.
If you have a good Subway Connect, hit us up. DM us comments. We want to hear it.
We just mentioned Jared. I don't think that they're going to want to sponsor us anymore.
Get that negative attitude out of here. Talk good, talk bad, just talk. I mean, come on.
We want to have some good juju going for us.
Yeah.
And not helping.
Speaking of Jared and bad juju, Kyle, can you describe your energy level for me today?
Oh, this will be interesting. I haven't heard this in a while.
In terms of what?
In terms of Western.
Oh. So, in the Westerns, when they're out in the middle of the desert and they've been stripped of everything that they have, all their resources, and their horse just died, and they're meandering, and they go through this little valley, it looks like an oasis, and they come across a watering hole, and they're so myopically focused on the tepid brown water that they start drinking, and they look up, and there's a rotting carcass of an antelope in it, and they start throwing up and vomiting, and that's all you ever hear from that character in the entire story. You assume they're dead. That's what we're going for today.
That's descriptive and deep. Wow.
I felt that.
Yeah.
I felt like you just ate Subway.
That's how I feel.
Well, speaking of West, we watched Wild Wild West, starring Will Smith and Kevin Kline. Kyle, I'm going to start with you. I think you're going to know more than Andrew, because Andrew admitted to me earlier he never saw this movie as a kid.
Nope.
So, Kyle, tell me, what do you remember about Wild Wild West as a child?
Yet again, another one I did not see in movie theaters, but I do remember the marketing around it. There was a lot of toys, a lot of Happy Meal toys. I don't know if it might have been Burger King.
Yes, it was Burger King.
I think it was Burger King that did the toys for this one. And this was, again, around the time of Men in Black. And I remember the toys. There was a lot of action figures. I think there was the tank that's in this movie that was out as well. They did a pretty good job marketing it. But I remember renting this on home video, and I think my brother and I watched this one. I think this came out around the same time as Remember the Alamo, which is a pretty heavy movie that my brother and I watched. And this was obviously the more lighthearted one out of the two of them. I remember this really reminding me of James Bond a lot because of the gadgets, because of the sound, the soundtrack that's in there. When I was a kid, the things that stood out to me the most weren't the things that stood out to me as an adult, like the heavily sexist and racist vibes that are just very blatant, wordplay. It was mostly
This movie is extremely sexist and racist.
Hey, it fits for the time,
It sure does, but damn it, they tried way too hard.
It's even brutal for the 90s. I remember that being a big thing, as the 90s even kicked back on this, and if that's happening, then you fucked up.
Yeah, some of it's funny, most of it's not. But as a kid, I didn't understand any of that. I just noticed that Selma Hayek was beautiful. It's child in now, so that's something that's a pillar of consistency. But aside from that, the giant spider at the end was something that I vividly remember. And the gadgets, thought they were so cool as a child. And looking back on it now, holy shit, none of that makes any sense. And half of it wouldn't even work.
Did you guys ever hear the Kevin Smith story on the giant spider?
No.
So it's on YouTube. It's out there. It's like an 18-minute video, I think, or something like that, where he tells his entire story. I can't do it justice like Kevin did, but mainly he goes into Warner Bros. After chasing Amy, and he's looking for more work. And they have some projects on the board, and they were like, here you go. We're trying to rewrite Superman. And he's a big comic book guy, knows everything about Superman, big Superman fan. So he was able to work his way into writing the first draft of this movie. But they were like, oh, you got to go talk to John Peters about it and get his permission. And John Peters is a producer. He produced the first Batman. But he tells Kevin Smith while they're writing it, and again, long story short, and he talks more about how John Peters is just off the wall. Tells Kevin Smith, I don't want 3 things in this movie. Don't want to see him fly. Don't want to see him in the suit. And he's got to fight a giant spider at the end of it. So he's like, okay, so you don't want to see Superman fly. You don't want to see Superman in his costume. And you want him to fight a giant spider at the end of it. John Peters looks at Kevin Smith. And he's like, did you know that spiders are the apex predator of the insect world? And that's all he said to him. Tim Burton signed on to direct it, and it got canned before it went to shoot. Later down the road, Kevin Smith goes and sees Wild Wild West, a movie produced by John Peters, and he got his giant mechanical spider after all.
Sexy.
Wow. Yeah, just so innovative and genius in his writing.
Really
what
ahead
a
of the curve.
concept. What a concept. It's not like it wasn't written by a 12-year-old at all, but like, hell yeah, good for him. Beautiful.
Kyle, would you say that you liked this movie as a kid?
I was ambivalent. I didn't really give a shit one way or another. There were so many other good movies that I was watching, or like any of the James Bond movies that remind me of this, or Mission Impossible, that were like adventure, but like also like gadgets and shit like that. Like that was pretty cool. This was just kind of like a and again, I didn't get the comedy when I was that young. I didn't understand the racial references that were.
We're
being
using
thrown
the
around.
word comedy very loosely here. Like I'm air quoting
it's very
here.
forced. I mean, there are some parts that made me laugh out loud, which was good, but it wasn't the parts that I think that they were trying to make funny.
Yeah.
It was more of just the timing, honestly.
Yeah, the timing was really good at times, but anything that Will Smith was trying to be funny on, it was the opposite. And I didn't get any of it. Again, as a kid, it was lost on me. So I didn't care one way or other. I only watched this movie once. It was not a rewatch versus like You Only Live Twice or The World Is Not Enough or any of the like Goldeneye, like any of the good James Bond movies like that I grew up watching. I'd rewatch that, rewatch Indiana Jones, rewatch The Action Adventure, rewatch. This was a one watch, and I was like, oh, cool. Bye.
Andrew, tell me what little you know about this movie. You didn't see it as a kid, right?
No, but I remember the craze about it. I remember the song and the music video, and everyone was talking about it. So in my, I guess, 7-year-old mind, 6.5-year-old mind, I think I was going to be 7. I thought this was some massive, important movie because everyone was flocking to see it in theaters. And yeah, it was a big deal because of the hubbub about it, but the only thing I remember really is the music video and the song and just the firestorm of marketing around it.
Can you sing the song?
No. I can do dum bum 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 boom. I can do the beginning. I do the instrumental, but that is about it. I'm not gonna rap for you. Are you kidding me? That'd be an embarrassment.
Kyle, can you sing some of the song?
Wicked wild, wicked wild, wicked wild, wild. Fucking killed me.
That was awesome.
So,
That was so good.
That song I think was in the like Billboard Top 100.
Yeah,
too,
it was a
dropped.
big hit.
Naturally.
I remember at the dance studio back in the day, there was a big old production number to Wild Wild West, and at the yearly recital, people lost their minds over it, and it was supposed to be cool, but looking back and thinking about it, I don't know if it lived up to that expectation.
It's still a very catchy song.
It's very catchy, very catchy.
But it is that. I mean, it's at the height of the Big Willie style.
Yeah,
kind of.
Yeah,
era.
I mean, it was a standalone track. I remember my buddy made me like back then you'd do like mixtapes or like, burn a CD. I'm pretty sure he put that on there one summer, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty romantic.
So romantic.
I actually watched this movie a lot as a kid.
You would.
Yeah, I know. I fell into it. Because one, I remember the Burger King commercials. I don't know if anybody else remembers those.
Yep.
I vividly remember the one about the 2 guys and they're trying to duel in the sun and they can't see. So they just start shooting wildly into the streets. And then this random girl shows up and she goes, "Here, why don't you wear these glasses just like Jim West?" And they're like, "Who's Jim West?" "Go get your Jim West glasses for," I think it was like $2 or something. And I remember for whatever reason, I had a pair of those. And I think that my brother had bought them as a joke in high school. And somehow I ended up with them. And they didn't fit at all. They were so narrow, they would only like shield half your eyes from the sun.
I bet you looked like such a fucking dork wearing those things too.
I bet you got those sunglasses on and stared right into the sun.
Yeah.
I did. I just remember it made the burn in your eyes worse because like the sun would hit the lens of the glasses and then reverberate back into your eyes. So you had this like mirror effect. No wonder I didn't end up with cataracts.
So they weren't polarized lenses, is what you're saying.
No, and the
Burger
sunglasses
King.
themselves, if anyone else remembers this out there, it was like made out of like a wired coat hanger. Like they were the most uncomfortable things. They weren't even like plastic. They were just rubber metal. It was weird.
Were they used in abortions?
I did live in Alabama, so there was a chance.
Some back alley shenanigans.
I don't even know if that's back alley. That's like
Out in the
just
open.
ended
that's
right
like
in the middle.
finding somebody in a pond somewhere. I think that's more of a West Virginia thing, you know.
Sorry to all of our listeners in West Virginia. I know there's quite a few.
Yeah, for real.
Literally a few. I'm sure they remember the Jim West abortion glasses.
Glad we settled on an official name.
I watched this movie so much. I think we went to the theater multiple times to see this. I do remember liking a lot of the technical stuff in it, like Kyle said. Like I liked a lot of the mechanical gadgets and the inventions that Gordon was coming up with. I love that little steampunk style. Not a whole lot of films do that. Or do it right anyway. And I kind of still appreciate the film for having that in it. I think that was the only redeeming quality it had, not to...
Well, don't give it away.
Well, I was about to say not to
give
play
your
my
thoughts, all right?
It's going to get worse. Not to play my hand early, but I saw this movie a lot, had it on VHS, watched it a lot, but hadn't seen this movie since I was like maybe 10 years old. I think it's been that long. Big movie at the time. And was this at the height of Will Smith's late 90s run? Because I know he's had...
I wouldn't say it was quite a... Well, it might have been because he had done Independence Day, Men in Black before this. There was another one in there, wasn't there?
Probably.
He was also in Fresh Prince previously.
Which was previous, yeah.
But that must have ended... What did that end in, 94, 95 or something like that?
And his music career.
Yeah, and this was the almost the peak of his
So
music
this was
career,
like I think this was like where he was starting to cool off. And
I don't know,
think-
because he still did so much more. That was the peak of his, welcome party to the big screen in a sense. But he still went on to do bigger and better things from here.
I think there was that gap in between for a while.
There was some time.
Yeah,
There was
and
some time.
I think this movie kind of cooled him off. Not like killed his fame, but like it cooled him off for a little bit. Because he told a reporter that he turned down The Matrix to be in this movie.
Oh, that's a big miss.
Good for us, though.
He says it's the biggest regret of his career at this point, which is understandable. The reason Will Smith took that role, too, is because he grew up a big fan of Jim West and Wild Wild West. It was one of those shows, which we should mention that this isn't just a movie just written out of thin air. This is based on the TV show.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure they did it justice.
They didn't. But speaking of justice, Andrew, is this movie justified in being made?
I mean, why don't we go over some numbers, and those numbers can speak for its justification, if you will. Largest budget ever for any movie ever created up to this point. 170 million was the budget. I'm pretty sure there have been other movies in recent years. I'm pretty sure Oppenheimer had a bigger budget than that. I'm pretty sure that Avatar had a bigger budget. Could be wrong on Avatar, but I'm pretty sure Oppenheimer's was more than 170 million. I thought it was in the 300s. But $170 million budget. And just after watching that, I don't think it justified 170 million
That is
whatsoever.
such a massive budget.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the amount of CGI that's in that movie. It's profound.
Yeah.
And it was just the highlight and the dawn of CGI. There's also a lot of location shoots and there were some practical effects. They were using a lot of the train that's in there. as used, and that's a real train. Like, they had some interesting stuff happen, and also some of the players in that movie at that time, Will Smith was pretty big.
I mean, I'm sure Will Smith got paid a pretty penny at that point.
This is, to date, as the last time I looked, this is to date Warner Brothers' most expensive movie they made.
That sounds about right. Because I just looked it up. Star Wars: The Force Awakens had a budget of $447 million.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. We were talking about CGI and whatnot. The background of Monument Valley, that didn't look real to me. Was that real? Did they actually film in Monument Valley?
They might have.
It did not. It did not look real. It looked green screen to me. It looked fake. I could be wrong, and we should probably have that factoid on hand. But it looked fake, and that's something that if they really fake that, I mean, maybe they can't film there for historical reasons, and it being government property and it's sacred land. But it looked fake. That's such a beautiful landscape, and for the money that they had, I don't know, kind of pisses me off. But $170 million budget, domestic grossed altogether $113 million and some change. It's, not great. International $108 million, altogether for a measly $222 million. And
they just made some of the money back then.
But it was a commercial failure, like an absolute flop. With the amount of money they put into it, and they only got $50 million, I guess, back. Like, that's nothing. The budget doesn't even account for the marketing.
And that movie was marketed too. So there's no telling the loss there. I mean, definitely a bomb. I remember at the time liking it as a kid, but I remember all like the adults being like, that movie really sucked.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else remembered that.
Well, don't give it away. We haven't even gotten into it yet.
I'm not even giving it away. It could redeem itself. I'm just saying at what was said at the time in 1998.
Yeah, well, those are the numbers, and we can let that speak for itself.
Are we ready to get into it? Are we ready to find out if this movie stood the test of time?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's get into it.
I want to start with something that immediately pissed me off. So we open this movie, and you see this guy running through the woods, like a scientist at the time. We don't really know. Turns out he is. But he's being chased by a saw blade, and he's got a collar on his neck. And the collar is kind of like, looks like a giant funnel his head's sitting in, and it's metal. And this saw blade is just chasing him down at the speed of sound. And somehow this guy is able to outrun it for the most part while mouthing off exposition.
I have to tell President Grant, giant spider.
And he's running for his freaking life through these woods or cornfield as this giant saw blade is coming after him, and eventually it reaches up to him and cuts his head off. And then we're introduced to who, Andrew?
General Bloodbath McGrath. Yeah, and he's got the horn for the ear. What do you even call that thing?
A hearing aid.
Yeah, but it takes the place of like it looks like a gramophone or something like that. It's like it's a mini gold gramophone. It's his hearing aid and his right or left. I don't fucking remember. But yeah.
But what is he wearing? I think it's important.
He's wearing like old Confederate garb, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like his general outfit.
And the war has ended.
The war has ended. We're a year after.
And it looks like he hasn't washed it either.
He doesn't look like he's washed.
So that's also important. What year is this now?
1865. So the war just, and it's not even a year.
That's going to be important. That's going to be important.
We're in post-Civil War era, but like just barely.
So
Lincoln just got assassinated.
And then we get the only thing in this movie that's okay is the opening credits are styled after the Wild Wild West TV show from, I guess, the 60s. I didn't even look it up.
Yeah, I caught that. What a reference.
So
real neat for all the true film buffs out there,
and especially Andrew, with you being a big-time fan of that show.
Oh, yeah. I know so much about it.
We're introduced to Jim West, played by Will Smith.
And he's in some like
water tower. I don't know. I guess that's what you call that.
There's
tons of shit in this water tower too.
It's like a penthouse.
Yeah. Like, how did they get that up there?
I don't know, but he's in the water naked, make it out with some woman.
And I don't mean to like point this out for 1865, but they're both black.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are you trying to say, Chase?
How are they able in a southern town, because they do reference being in a southern town, able to not only get through that town and get into the water tower, but also bring all that stuff with them.
As my grandma always said, if there's a will, there's a way.
No pun intended either.
No.
His name,
Did you mean to do that?
His name is Will Smith.
I did mean to do that, but I didn't think much on it. It's a fictionalized blockbuster. Who cares? You're already drawn to Will Smith. He's hot. He's making out with someone who's hot. You can tell that he's got some special power and special abilities to him. So who gives a shit? Let him be black and let him be in the South. Who gives a fuck?
He's very arrogant too. His character is extremely arrogant and kind of like just an asshole.
Yeah.
He's a prick.
But
He's a prick.
As he's making out with this woman, he's kind of overhearing some commotion.
There's
on
a
the
big
streets.
wagon approaching
Yeah.
with a bunch of rednecks and people with horses and whips and guns. And what happens? They roll up. They start unpacking. No, they start packing shit.
So there's a little
peephole
hole in the wall that he's kind of looking out of in the water tower. And this is where we get our first really bad forced gag of the movie, which is he's making out with this woman, and he's slowly trying to. Thank you, Andrew. Yep. And he's slowly crooning his head over while trying to make out with her and moving his lips. And then all of a sudden he peels his lips away, but he's still acting like he's kissing her. And then we cut to outside and they're throwing shit around, cut back in there, and he's moved his head farther over, but she's kissing his neck now. And then move on, and he's still mouthing like he's kissing her, even though he knows he's not kissing her. And then he's fully has his head turned around, and she's just staring at him, and he's just moving almost like he's chewing on something. It was so fucking
good
stupid.
physical comedy, just excellent.
Yeah, hilarious, really great. Buster
good
Keaton
physical and
busting
situational comedy. I look at that moment as a crowning point of comedy from start to finish, from the very beginning to the end of time.
Really, really, really dumb.
Yeah,
really
and
dumb.
he looks at the peephole. He sees these dudes.
Well, the big thing is he's trying to find Bloodbath McGrath, the character that we saw at the beginning. So that's why he's there in this town, and that's why he eventually ends up following this wagon full of shit. Well, I think it was nitrates or
nitro. It was something that was flammable. Nitroglycerin. Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's flammable, and
it's not flammable. It's an explosive that if you jostle it around too much,
it will combust. Not combust,
yeah,
but
it will blow up.
So what do? We just giddy up, horsey.
yeah.
Well, the wagon hits the water tower. It falls over, and he pops out naked on the ground and starts fighting these rednecks naked. And they're impressed. They're impressed because he's well endowed. And they look at him and they're like, "Oh, what you got there?" I don't know what they said, but there was a moment where one of the guys he was fighting falls to the ground and looks up. He's looking right at his crotch, and you can see him just stare and
his face becomes that of a horror.
Yeah,
mouth agape, ready to take.
What's that monster a few inches from my face? Holy shit! So
that's a big snake.
Hey,
stereotypes.
If there's a will, there's a way. But eventually he ends up following this, or taking. I guess he took the wagon and followed it all the way to this plant.
He hung on the rope swing inside the barn to catapult him on the moving wagon that was unmanned and simply being pulled by horses. He catapulted himself, landed on it, kind of like a slingshot at the end, and this horse wagon carriage thing is just driving into the woods at full speed, and he's trying to stop it or do something.
No, he gets onto the front of it, and he just follows it wherever it goes.
No, that's right. He jumps on that front horse. That's right. Yeah.
It ends up in this brothel
saloon.
Plantation.
It was a saloon brothel plantation combo.
I looked around and I was like, where the fuck are they?
Saloon brothel plantation combo. That's where they're at.
So, I'm sure they had plenty of those in the South at the time. But he ends up going there thinking he's going to find Bloodbath McGrath, and here we are. He's going to find Bloodbath McGrath because we go to him and he's hitting on this woman in the corner, which we'll get to in a sec.
When he's trying to pick out his prost.
Right. And everyone else is hitting on this woman too, but she is trying to get at Bloodbath. She wants him. And
tell me now, is this woman an actual woman? Is she a woman? Kyle,
what defines a woman?
That's why I'm asking here. We gotta set the.
This ain't no real woman.
No, it's not.
This woman ain't identifying as a woman. Neither. This woman is an imposter.
This is a character. This is Kevin Kline.
This is Agent Gordon. He is moonlighting as this prostitute to try to get Bloodbath McGrath alone, which she ends up doing, or he ends up doing.
Because Gordon is trying to do the same thing that Jim West is trying to do.
So-
They have the same motive here, same goals. How about that? Great writing, connecting two characters with the same goal within the first 10 minutes of the movie. I mean, wow.
And this is the first instance of the movie where they keep fucking each other over.
Yeah.
Or at least being complete morons. So he gets Bloodbath in the upstairs room and pulls his, I guess, the belt or whatever he had, and it was like two fucking like discs spinning around, so it hypnotized Bloodbath McGrath.
It was a hypnotizing board.
Yeah, and
you
like
know, one of those things. It works
on his belt, and it's working for the most part, except he turns it around.
He thinks he's a dog, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he thinks he's a dog and can't speak.
because she
But
commands him.
honestly, I'm going to be honest. I thought that
commands him.
part was actually pretty funny.
It was
'Cause
funny.
He's like, now you are a dog, and now you will speak to me. And he goes, "Ruff." And he goes, all right, now you will tell me everything you know about Dr. Lovelace. And he goes, "Ruff, ruff." And I was like, okay, that's pretty funny. That's
What
It
I
was.
actually I gotta say this. One of the funniest things that happened in this movie was they open a door prior to this, trying to find a bedroom to go into, and he opens the door and goes, "Oh, that's a new one," and then you hear a goat move around, and then they shut the door, and I was like, "Yeah."
Room's occupied.
So it was like, that's actually pretty
good
funny.
shit.
But the belt stops working, and Bloodbath kind of starts coming out of his hypnotized stage and grabs a knife out of his boot. And at that point in time, Jim West flies through the window because that's what he does, and interrupts the whole thing and knocks Bloodbath unconscious.
He accosts Bloodbath,
yeah.
takes him out.
So the movie should be over right now. But instead, Kevin Kline's character does not reveal himself to Jim West
He
immediately,
keeps pretending he's this prostitute, this woman prostitute.
which allows Bloodbath to escape. And then there's just chaos within the whole building. And then that's when he reveals to him, after Bloodbath's already gotten away, he's like, "I'm a U.S. Marshal." They now know that they're on the same mission at that point. What happens next, Kyle?
At this point, he gets away. They go their separate ways, but we go to Washington, D.C., and we end up in the Oval Office. Jim West goes in to meet the president, who is Ulysses S. Grant, the war general. And he's talking to him, and General Grant, he's like talking to him about, like, you know, what he needs help with. And General Grant's like, you know, "I want you to work with a partner of mine. He's a U.S. Marshal, and he's brilliant. One would say he's one of the best of his kind in the field." And Jim West goes, "Well, he says something about a ring." He goes like, what's that ring you got on?" He's like,
No, he says, "Who are you?"
yeah.
He pulls out a gun. He's like, "Tell me again, who are you?" And that's when he's like, "I'm Ulysses S. Grant. What do you mean?" And then he was like, "No, you're not. Your ring says Harvard. Ulysses S. Grant went to West Point."
It was his.
That's right.
It was yeah. It was the ring, and then that kind of ruined it. And then Ulysses S. Grant walks in.
And then we find
who
out
was paid
that
by?
Morton, is that his name?
No, he's played by Kevin Kline.
Well, it is Kevin Kline. What's the character's name? What's his character's name?
Gordon.
Gordon, not Morton. Sorry.
Yes.
Gordon. What's his first name? Can we spell that out?
Artemis.
Artemis. That's right, because Selma calls him
Artie.
We'll get there. Yeah, and then what happens next? They think Bloodbath is the villain who is making all of these scientists disappear. That was what Ulysses S. Grant was worried about. He received a cake that had a bunch of spiders crawling out of it, and there was some notes, and this sounds like I'm fucking making it up, but it's not. And he received some notes.
Somebody made it up.
Yeah, and there was a threat that they were going to, whoever wrote that letter was going to come sack the U.S. government with the help of the multiple scientists they've kidnapped and captured, which sounds like bullshit, but that is exactly what happened.
Yep.
And yeah, they team up together, Artie and Jim, and yeah, I don't remember what the fucking next scene is. They have to go to New
They're on the
Orleans.
train now.
They got to go to New
Yeah.
Orleans because they know that Bloodbath is going to be at some debutante ball or some shit like that.
Which honestly, before they even get there, it looked like the same scene, but from the previous. They get on the train and, they're bickering because they're two opposites. Gordon is a scientist himself and an inventor. And
he's a nerd.
He's a dork. And
Jim West is a cowboy, a strapping young man who's in the army and,
And shoots everything.
Yeah.
Like he shoots his beer open. That's the kind of cowboy he is. He's always constantly shooting something or pulling his gun out.
Really great character expose.
Yeah, it's so
perfect.
bad. And then they kind of get in this little tussle on the train where at one point Gordon does this thing. I don't know, Kyle, if you notice this in movies a lot, but he pretends to know karate. And why does this happen so much where they do this really fake kind of karate stance and whatnot, and the other character just sits there and lets him do it, and it's just a plot to do something else. And in this case,
it's just a way for them to look dumb, but it also I think it's a fucking cheap gag because it insinuates that karate's kind of dumb or martial arts in general are kind of fucking stupid, or that you could just
here we are.
But it's just a cheap gag.
It's cheap. It's cheap writing. It's cheap everything. So
it never really works. I've never really seen it work well, except for in Rush Hour, and that's about it.
Jackie Chan.
Yeah. I mean, you're following that up with an actual martial artist, though. And this one is just you two idiots. And it makes Jim West look dumb, and it makes Gordon look dumb.
Well, they kind of are, in a sense.
Yeah,
but...
I mean, they repeatedly do dumb things in this movie, and I don't know how... Anyway, we'll get to more of it, I promise.
But they're on this train to New Orleans. They're going to some ball to catch Bloodbath.
Which go about two different ways.
What? And I want to bring this back to everyone's attention. They're on their way to New Orleans, and Gordon goes, "We need to figure out where Bloodbath is." He's like, "He's in New Orleans," and it cuts to a scene where he has the head of the scientist we saw at the beginning.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's an important scene.
And puts him on the table, and it's a perfectly preserved head that's been sitting on the table in open air for about 2 weeks now, probably.
And how many times does Will Smith point out that that's a human head?
He says it at nauseam.
That is a human.
He says it, I think, 5 times. 5 different times, and he changes it each time, and he ends it with how Kyle just said it. And it was just like, all right, we got the point.
That's exactly where, some of this, they tried way too hard, but in trying hard, they were lazy as fuck.
So
none of that is funny. Repeating the same thing over and over again and just changing the way you say it can be funny sometimes. This is not that. Because he was trying to make it funny. And when you try to make it funny, it's not funny.
Well, and I can even speak to that. A lot of that budget that we talked about, that inflated budget, came from reshoots. They reshot a lot of the movie to add humor to it, because when they sent it through a test audience, they were so confused. They were like, "We don't know what this is. Is this supposed to be a comedy?" And they took that as, we need to add more comedy to this movie. So shit like that, where they're just emphasizing one line over and over again to try to get you to laugh, is the result. And in this scene is painful.
Well, Will Smith has a good career as a comedian, so they relied on the right person.
And this head is sitting there on the table, and he comes up with this idea that the last image that you've seen as a human is burned into your
brain. So he fucking projects light from the back of his head through his eyes on the wall,
through his skull, and it's a blurry picture.
It's upside down, so they turn his head upside down to get it upside right, and then it's blurry.
Which is why, if you already knew that, why the fuck didn't you do that in the first place?
I don't fucking know. And then
because it was so easy to do. It was so easy. All you had to do was shine the light and turn it. And then he's blurry. Will Smith's like, well, he needed glasses in his reality. So he put glasses on him. And this tiny, tiny little note on the wall, they're able to sit there and read everything word for word.
No, that Bloodbath McGrath is going to be at this ball in New Orleans,
which they knew to begin with. Why did we need this scene? We didn't need it.
It was pointless. Again, it's like the writers were insecure or felt worried about what they had written, and they needed this little, nuggets to make it worthwhile and make it seem like it was actually, I don't fucking get it. But yeah, whatever. They also discuss about their plan as to how they will attack or cost.
Is this where we get the boob joke?
Yes, yeah.
It's a scene from this movie everyone remembers, though.
Artemis is wanting to dress up, essentially, and Will Smith or Jim is like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm a cowboy. I don't dress up. You can do your thing. And as we know, Artemis was a lady prost in the previous, scene, and he pulls out his fake tits.
Lady Prost sounds like a punk rock band.
I'm going to start it. He pulls out his fake tits, and Will squeezes them, and it's dumb. And the conductor is behind them the entire time, hearing their conversation about grabbing breasts, and it's like, oh, I guess I knew all along, as if he knew that they were gay, but that wasn't the case at all. Just awful. It's just dumb. Which I will say, Gordon does give good advice in this, because he's like, you're just gonna march into a Southern plantation party
as a black man with Confederate soldiers in there, and just start shooting.
And he's like, yeah,
I'm gonna do that.
But I guess they don't really even divulge what either's plan is in that sense, besides Jim going guns blazing and Artemis, I guess, disguising, but we're not privy to any particulars.
He seems unworried by this. Yeah. He seems unworried.
You would think that they would have more of a plan going into something of such importance, but
I wrote my notes. Does he know he's black in the South, in 1865?
Which they do. To be fair, they do get into that when shit hits the fan, but
they do.
It's very silly. It's just silly.
The fact that he went
even real.
But the fact that he went this far, I mean, they get into the party and he's just walking around the party and no one really says a word. He gets glances every now and again.
Yeah, he gets confronted by some lady escorts who are seemingly very interested in him.
Also Chinese.
Yes.
So how is she existing in this world too in the South?
Hey, I love it. I love it,
Anyway, so she's trying to seduce him at this point.
But that's irrelevant. We're walking around the party. Dr. Lovelace, who has already been introduced to us briefly, gets his real introduction here.
Yeah. There's a cake, a seeming cake or something of Abraham Lincoln, a bust of Abraham Lincoln, and it explodes, and he jumps up out of it. And he's a quadriplegic. He's not. He's just a paraplegic. But he comes out. He's in some kind of Stephen Hawking rendition, steampunk 1850s wheelchair.
It's a locomotive wheelchair. It's a steam locomotive wheelchair.
Yes. And he comes out of that, and the first thing I think of is well, if he was in the war, there's zero chance he would have lived with that injury. There's no way. He's missing his legs from the hips down. He doesn't even have any hips. So I'm and he starts going through all this, well, y'all look like you've seen a ghost. Why'd the South lose? I love the South. And I lost 35 feet of intestine.
And my bladder. And the right to, have children.
He lost everything. There's no way that man would have survived. I don't care what type of technology he had.
Also, I just want to say, I love Kenneth Branagh. I do think he's great.
Although he was really good.
He was.
I will say this. His performance is good, but he delivers one of the worst Southern accents a British man has ever delivered in the history of film.
Egregious, Chase.
I think it's really egregious. I don't think it was that bad.
I thought it was.
It was cartoony,
I thought it passed.
I think it was supposed to be cartoony. I think it was more than fine.
But I don't disagree. It was a little chintzy, but I think it was
cartoony.
He broke it several times too, because he was trying to do too cartoony of a voice, so it did break at multiple times.
I was never bothered by it, but I appreciate your opinion, and I'm glad we have some dissent for one time.
The descent on the descent.
Yeah.
How much we hate this movie.
I don't hate it. I never said that. But yeah, so where the fuck are we?
I do want to make mention of the woman too that is trying to seduce Will Smith, because she's trying to get him into a certain area. She's like, what? Meet me in the foyer. She says it multiple times until he finally corrects him, or he corrects her. And then we meet Selma Hayek's character.
We actually saw her in that previous scene at the saloon, brothel, and plantation.
Yes,
it was very
brief,
in and out, brief.
She's a quote unquote entertainer who's not really an entertainer. She has ulterior motives. We don't know what they are.
And
yeah.
Jim West goes into the room with the Asian lady, and she's seducing him.
Well, even before that, West has a confrontation with Lovelace. They exchange barbs. West makes some jokes about Lovelace not having legs, and Lovelace makes some jokes about Jim West being black. And it was very in your face, but also like veiled and just punny.
It's not the only time in this movie that this happens.
No.
And there's a lot of wordplay that's just I would hesitate to even call it wordplay, because it's just it's like, oh, bless his heart kind of shit.
They're basically playing tennis with derogatory sentences and phrases.
But it's brief. It doesn't last long. They go their own ways.
Andrew, what was one of them? I know that the ending, he goes, you know what they say about a bad woman? They'll cut the legs right off.
Yeah, that was the one that I remember. At that point, Lovelace rolls his eyes and wheels away. And that is when he goes into his office and he meets with what's his name? McGrath. Bloodbath McGrath.
Yeah.
This is important because Will Smith knows that he's eavesdropping, which you would think that Lovelace, well, maybe Lovelace did it on purpose, but he's right outside the office listening in, eavesdropping, and Lovelace tells Bloodbath, hey, get your troops together, son. Get your troops together. We're going to meet at this lake right here. X marks the spot. And he's like, I'll see you there at 10 p.m. tonight. And Jim West is like, oh, I just learned something. Okay, cool. They disperse. They leave. This is when Jim goes in to the office. And he takes the paper that was the pad that was written on by Lovelace and starts scraping it with a flat piece of metal to see, when you write, someone help me here. Those old receipts.
Tracing paper?
Yeah, tracing paper in a sense. And he traces out what was written by Lovelace and realizes that there's an X on this map by this lake. So obviously they're meeting there. Ooh, light bulbs going off. Cool. Neato. Got to get there at this spot in the lake by 10 p.m. tonight. And at that point, he's once again confronted by the Asian prostitute. And she tries to make a move on him, but out of the corner of his eye, he sees someone moving on the wall that looks like they should be a painting, but it is a person, and he has a gun, and then he pulls out his gun and shoots that person. That person shoots the Asian prostitute, and he turns around.
He looks in the Asian prostitute's eye and sees that she's looking at somebody. He ducks very briefly, and the guy who was going to shoot Will Smith
shoots the Asian prostitute.
The Asian lady right in the face after she shows her thong.
All semantics,
Yes, and then
he goes on a killing spree.
Immediately goes bang, 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 bang. You don't even see who's shooting at, and he's walking out, and all of a sudden you just see a guy fall from the ceiling and two other guys. Apparently there was a whole bunch of assassins waiting for him in perpetuity that just knew he was going to be there the whole time.
And they were in hiding
in the fucking pictures.
And we never saw them at all. But he kills them all, and he walks out, and he's free and able to do as he pleases as the night goes on.
And the next thing he does as he pleases, he goes down and talks to the woman that he thinks is Agent Gordon.
Yes.
And it's not. And
it's a woman who looks just like him, dressed up.
He proceeds to
play bongos on her boobies.
And then the whole crowd is in an uproar, to which
they decide.
Agent Gordon, who is dressed up as a Frenchman, goes, "Hang him! Hang him!" And they all,
which I'm surprised this was the first point in this movie we got that reference of a hanging.
But yeah,
he gets taken outside, and then this is where there's a slightly comedic scene where there are some funny things happening where he tries to convince the crowd that he's playing the smart man with the dumb crowd, and he's trying to convince him hey, listen, where I come from, I'm really dumb, and where I come from and my homeland, and somebody goes, Georgia, and he goes, Africa. I thought that was pretty fucking funny.
Was funny.
It was pretty good timing. That was the only funny part of that scene. Because everything else, he's tries to butter him up, and he tries to talk about oh my gosh, when I said redneck ball, I mean, you should be proud of being a redneck because red is as powerful and empowering, and neck is, and he kept on doing the thing where he says the same fucking word. It's just piss poor writing.
Repetition is not comedy.
And I don't think redneck was a term at that point in time.
It was not. I don't believe.
So they're going to hang him, but our friend Agent Gordon busts out in the chariot, right? And the rope that they were going to hang him on, somehow Gordon switched the rope out for some elastic fucking rope, which was zero chance ever that something like that was even made back then. Nothing like that. There was no mass production of rubber like that. Fucking bullshit, horseshit. So
My head hurts.
He was like, I wasn't actually gonna have them hang you because it's this rope that I gave him. It was elastic. Huh? So long story short, Will Smith is gonna use that rope to propel himself to jump into the chariot with Selma Hayek and Kevin Kline. And now they're all together, and now they're moving towards the train, towards the X marks the spot. Will Smith goes, fuck y'all, I'm out. I'm going to go to get there ahead of you because I'm a stud. And he jumps on one of the horses, unclips it somehow. We get a close-up shot of him unclipping himself. We're supposed to belive that that's all it needed to happen.
Very realistic. What are you talking about?
Super realistic.
Yeah.
Kicks himself off. And then while after that happens, we go to a metal steamboat, which did exist, but they didn't look like that. And it has a whole bunch of the foreign dignitaries and Loveless and General Bloodbath McGrath looking over on the riverfront to a bunch of Confederate holdouts who are meandering around what are we even doing here? And all of a sudden a tank appears and starts
a tank in the 1800s.
Yeah. And, okay.
A sub tank, not even just a tank. I want to stop you there. This invention is a sub tank. It gets right out of the water with all the portholes and shit in it. Somebody's drowning in that thing.
And they did have submarines back then. That's something they did have. They had submarines and they had the steel hulled boat. The word tank did not exist in that sense until World War I. So everybody go fuck themselves with a rubber hose.
And then this sub-turned tank it just kills all of these soldiers.
It just kills everybody.
It just kills all the Confederate soldiers.
Bloodbath McGrath goes, I can't believe that you would do this to him. How could you I'll kill you. And he takes out his gun and Loveless just goes, bet I have a gadget for that. And slams down this little
button.
Big brass
what
button.
He says is, "You go to hell," and he's like, "After you, sir," and shoots him from his shotgun wheelchair, which will come into play later.
And why did Loveless want to kill these soldiers?
To test out his tank.
But he also was pissed that that the Confederates surrendered, and he lost all of that stuff below for nothing.
Yeah,
so
all in vain.
Very vain. He's very bitter. And
so
he's an evil genius, so bad combo.
Yeah, that all happens, and then the tank disappears, and then Will Smith arrives on scene, sees all the bloodbath, and then immediately after him, so there was zero need for the two of them to detach themselves. Will Smith is just a prick, and they're talking well, what happened here? I wonder. Oh, there's track marks, and it moved in a 180-degree circle, and it looks like there's a turret involved.
This reminds me of West Liberty. Oh
yeah!
Wow! What a plot point. Let's go there. West Liberty. What happened in West Liberty that we somehow now unfoldingly learn? Chase,
because now it gets poignant, right, Chase?
Yeah. Because now they learn that this has happened before, or at least what Will Smith had heard from all the people at West Liberty. West Liberty was where some of the free slaves were going.
Yeah, they settled there right on the river because they got over the river and they were in free territory, and that's where they lived.
And then he saw similar carnage there, so he understands that this tank or whatever this was that did this is the same thing that happened at West Liberty. He gets emotional over this, which you find out later why.
We'll get there.
Yeah, and then they hear some rustling in the
marsh and the
riverbank.
Yeah, and it's a Bloodbath McGrath, and he is on his last leg at this point, last lung, bleeding out on the riverbed, and he has this whole conversation with Will Smith where he tells him, oh, it's Loveless you want. Loveless is the one that did all this. He's the one that did it at West Liberty, too. So you can shoot me all you want, but he's the real enemy.
And I'm going to hell. See ya.
Yeah, and
then he dies.
Will Smith is like, where is he at? And then, so he's gone through all this exposition and then just dies conveniently.
Just right there.
And then he's
last
like,
breath.
where's he going? I don't know where he's going. And then Selma Hayek's like, I know. And then so it's like, we're really point A to point B. Really point A to point B. There is no there's no stakes here.
Also, Selma Hayek showing up here was just... We didn't even touch upon that. What's his name? Gordon rescues her from some cage in some like sex dungeon bedroom at that house in New Orleans. That's pretty much it.
Sex.
Yeah.
Lots of sex. Lots of innuendo in this.
Yeah. He just rescues her. He sees her in some cage. He's like, I think I know you from somewhere. Blah, blah, blah. They probably saw each other at that previous saloon, whorehouse, and plantation scene. And he just rescues her and takes her along. And that's why she's with him.
Yeah.
And at this point, she's like, I know where he's at. Chase, you can expound upon that.
So she's saying he's off to Utah.
Utah.
And
Utah.
So they're off to Utah, and because Lovelace is going to show something to this convention of people from other countries. Basically, these... I guess what would you call them? Like businessmen?
They're dignitaries.
Or
They're
dignitaries, yeah. So they're all heading to Utah for this big convention so Lovelace can sell them something.
In Spider Canyon.
They're back on the train, though.
Yes.
Right? So
and now we get the Selma Hayek hour where all we do is we spend, no kidding, 10 minutes of these two
fighting.
Just like... fighting and
throwing
just
themselves, no shame,
throwing themselves at Selma Hayek on
making sexual innuendos.
They even put
unwillingly,
and they put her in this, like, give her these clothes for her to sleep in, and just,
like giant pajamas, like the old-fashioned pajamas.
There's a door in the back of it, and the ass is just hanging out.
Yeah, assless pajamas.
Yeah, it's not assless. It's just there's just a little window, and it's unbuttoned.
It's that back flap of those old
it's
school
where
pajamas.
people would shit, so they didn't have to pull their pants
and
down.
It hangs so low that it literally lines up with her ass.
It shows like the top of her ass crack. It didn't even get the full.
We
thing.
did get the full thing, but
so and this is just like,
all right,
this just got them.
And then they're falling asleep and they're making those awful jokes. What do they say about? Oh, they mention breasts and God, we have to figure out one of these lines.
Whoa, you didn't want to go through the trading barbs between the paraplegic and the fucking black guy, but we got to go through the
because that actually it made me laugh in a pathetic way, like it was a sympathy laugh. Oh, we got to get a good night's ass or a good ass sleep. It was
good ass.
Yeah, no, he said something. He was like, I hope you had the breast night sleep.
That's it, breast night sleep, yeah.
But he kept on like fucking up a word. It's somewhere in that phrase. It wasn't the exact phrase, but that's exactly somewhat what it was. That was kind of funny.
It was. I think he did say, let's get a good night ass sleep or something like that. It was something very forced, but we got another round of those and really enjoyed that.
Job.
Fast forward, they're 700 yards from Spider Canyon in Utah. And they go through this tunnel, and you see this machine as they pull through the tunnel that they're riding underneath, and all of a sudden, what is it? It's Lovelace and some sort of like train contraption that can elevate up hundreds of feet and then contract down to land on the track. Like, dumb as fuck. It's like I was watching Inspector Gadget or something fucking lame.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. It's Inspector Gadgety kind of bullshit.
I can do whatever the fuck I want because I'm a genius and I've made all these inventions and, I'm defying
It's that, like, Ex Machina kind of bullshit. Fuck off.
Yeah,
like,
and
cool.
Truly
really
fuck
cool.
off, yeah.
And then he starts following them in his train and catching up to them. And then there's one point, which I really have to point this out. They are traveling on the tracks, and this tank train is right behind Jim West and Gordon's train, and it's a straightaway. And if he just fires his cannon round there, he's destroyed the train.
Yep.
It cuts over, so it's a straightaway. There's nothing in sight. It is just...
It was a straightaway, but then there was a curve all of a sudden.
Yeah, all of a sudden. So they just cut over, and you see a curve, and that just all they did was write that in so that he could miss the tank firing round. But there was enough time in between for them to reload and shoot another round, which they didn't do. Instead, Will Smith's like, I got this, and he takes a rope. I don't know why he decided to grab a rope at this time, because he didn't need it. And
but he did.
He did eventually. Lazy writing.
But he gets into that contraption, the pool table that folds over
From
180
earlier,
and puts him down below on the tracks underneath the car and drops down onto the tracks and slides forward. And at that point, I think Loveless shoots like a giant harpoon or something like that. And through the train all the way to the front, kind of stops it. And that suspends Will Smith forward, breaking his connection. And he slides underneath the train or whatever.
That makes any sense.
No, it doesn't. It sounds fucking dumb as shit.
Unless he was propelled out on those tracks backwards, he would be moving at the exact same, if not just a little bit slower rate of speed as the train and the one behind him. Obviously, he doesn't have as much mass as the train, so he might be moving a little slower. But, like, he wouldn't be shooting and careening back like that, necessitating him to pull an Indiana Jones and snipe his fucking lasso around a hook that would have just impaled his noggin. It was so dumb.
And the speed that he was going at, or supposedly going at, it would have like pulled all of his arms out of his socket.
It would have ripped his arms out.
He would
of
have
his
died.
Well, and that's the thing is like he actually grabs onto a metal pole at one point, moving, and I was like, that would have ripped both arms out and killed him. And I thought of you instantly, Kyle. I was like, he's going to tear that apart.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, first of all, if you tried to do that at that speed, your hands wouldn't be able to grab it. If they did, at worst, if you held on, you would dislocate an arm. You would not be able to lift yourself up, the physics of which doesn't even make any sense for him to do like a backflip on top when we get a close-up of his cowboy boots hitting the ground like, he did it. Such a dumb fucking sequence.
Yeah, I'm willing to suspend belief for certain things, but like, this was just... It was so contrived. It was so fucking contrived.
It was very cartoony.
Yeah.
It was very, like...
In this film, I feel like it just couldn't decide what it wanted to be in that regard. There were some serious moments.
It really wanted to be a comedy most of the time, and it just failed so hard at that.
Forced.
Because the action in this movie is just paint by numbers, scene to scene to scene.
Everything is forced.
It feels like there's no gravity to the situation. It doesn't feel like there's any stakes. And then we get to the point where they're captured now, and they have the metal funnel things, the metal cones on their head.
And I'll be honest, y'all, shortly after this is when I kind of started to doze. Mm-hmm. I literally fell asleep. And I fell asleep probably for a solid 15 minutes, maybe a little bit less. So I'm going to have you all carry the weight from here on out. Hopefully we can speed through this shit. But I don't have much to offer because I was getting so tired. And in my mind, I was like, I know I need to watch this, but honestly, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to let my body sleep.
So I'll me and Kyle split this one then.
Speed this shit up because it's just not worth it at this point.
We gave the time to Godzilla. We owe the time to Wild Wild West. So... They have the cones on their head, so you know what's about to happen.
Do you remember this part?
And then at one point, Loveless takes their train away, which I have something to say after this scene. But so they're in the middle of the desert in Utah, and they got this little roped off section around them. And
there was a little copper wire in the ground with stakes that makes a circle around them, and they have the cones on their necks, not on their heads.
It's like a little doggy fence.
So we've already seen this. We already know what's going to happen. But we don't know how it's going to happen. So Will Smith, Jim West, in a frighteningly stupid way, goes, well, what's going to happen? Oh, I step out, I step in. Nothing happens. And all of a sudden, the machine that's like a little dildo contraption that starts spooling up. And they're like, well, you done it now. So then it gets these two little circular saw discs that we saw at the beginning with a spider on them. Wow, that's so cool. And they start launching two of them at our two protagonists, and they start running through the cornfield. But let's talk about some stuff real quick.
Well,
I need to get this out. Two super magnets are on their necks, which, if they were super magnets, they would, in order to attract something, they would need to repel the other neck thing. They wouldn't have even been able to get close to one another if they were that powerful. Second thing, if those saw discs were magnetic as well, as soon as they come out of there, it would have been like a rail gun. It would have been right in there. It would have been almost instantaneous decapitation. So there's that. So we're just saying that. We're just gonna say that. Doesn't make any fucking sense.
They're outrunning these things for a little bit, but they're running through this
a cornfield in Utah.
Yeah, or
the staple state where corn is grown.
We know.
Not Indiana, not Illinois, not Iowa. High desert of Utah, baby. That's where corn's made and grown.
It's not real corn though, because real corn, as we all know, is like, it can be like 7 to 8 feet high, even taller than that. Yes. And that was like 5 to 6 foot. It didn't even look stupid.
This whole scene is just, it's baffling how
It's
dumb
dumb.
it is. But yeah, they're running through a cornfield again, to your point, in Utah, and these saw blades are coming after the magnet. There's one point in time too where Will Smith ducks down and the saw blade goes past him. And I was like, that's not how magnets work. He would be dead. They both should have been dead multiple times through this.
But when they escape their fate and they jump into the chasm together at the same time, and the saw blades hit each other. We don't even need to get into that because it's going to take too long. But if let's just say that like the two magnets are repelling each other, right? They would never have been able to even hug each other. They would have gotten together, and like they would have either for a second got together and then been pushed away, or they would have just gone around each other and hit the other side of the wall. They would not have been able to hug each other.
I wish they had just gotten decapitated instantly so we wouldn't have to talk about this.
It would have been a more interesting movie.
Yeah.
For
It just
sure.
ended right there.
We would have remembered it probably more fondly.
But they dropped at this point. They dropped down, like they took a leap of faith. Not they had no idea it was in that chasm, and they dropped down and they drop into what, Chase?
Like muck.
Sink muck.
It's muck.
Yeah.
It's not even
like-
really sink. It's just silt.
In a
Silt and mud. And,
Yeah, just in a dry desert.
Those do exist. That is very of the region.
Okay.
For sure.
But does
But
the cornfields exist?
no, that's forced.
Is this corn muck?
Yeah, I guess.
Cup.
It's the
It's
runoff.
cup.
It's the runoff from the cornfield.
Yeah, it's cock. So they're there now, and they crawl out of it, and
I want to say something real quickly. I feel like they tried to make West and Gordon like Laurel and Hardy-esque characters.
yeah.
And they really tried to play into that in this little desert montage they have together here. And it just wasn't that. Like, it was never going to be Laurel and Hardy or anything.
Starsky and Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch. You're like, honestly, Three Stooges -1. Like, it was just not.
Three Stooges are funny though.
They are. And so is Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah,
Like,
this is
not funny.
So, and then Gordon eventually breaks down, gets mad at Jim West for being Mr. Shooty Shoot, never like thinking, and then which, again, for someone who doesn't think, he's a high-ranking Army officer. Anyway, back to it. So they eventually somehow, how did they reverse the polarity of the magnets, Kyle?
He hit it with a rock.
Yeah,
And now
Dumb
they're
as hell. It doesn't make any sense.
and now they're stuck together.
yeah, it made no sense at all. That's, again, not how magnets work. And now they're stuck
So if
together.
if the magnets were that powerful and they stuck together like that, there is zero chance they'd be able to get themselves off. I'm sorry, there's no way. My dad used to work on MRI equipment, and he would bring home some of those magnets they use in our MRI machines and imaging machines, and they're like the size of your palm. And if you put two of them together, you have to pry them apart with something metal. If you put your finger in between two of them and you let them loose, you would crush your finger. There is zero chance if they were that powerful they'd ever be able to get it off of one another. No way. Sorry, dumb as hell.
Right, and then so they end up, and they've been captured, what, how many times in this movie already? Or
Too many times.
Like,
too many times?
yeah.
So I wrote that in my notes, too, of like, they're the worst federal agents I've ever seen in my entire life. But at this point, they find out that Gordon had his toolkit the entire time. It rolls out of his pocket. His spare toolkit out of it. How did you not feel that? I don't even want to dive into it. So this whole scene was pointless. They get the magnets off real fast and are walking in the desert of Utah.
They're in Monument Valley.
No telling how long they walk. It does not, and then
Doesn't look real.
doesn't look real. At one point, they stop where Will Smith can eat a rat, and this is where he tells Gordon that, you know, his family was murdered in West Liberty.
And Gordon says, I'll help you find him. I'll help you catch him.
I'll help you find him. I'll help you find him.
What a good guy.
So now they're walking in the desert, somehow survive, somehow find the train and catch up with it. The train is parked, and it like, again, point A to point B. There's nothing.
And then they see this giant, like, city, or, like, I don't even know what you kind of... They call it a city in this gulch, and it's...
It's like this steampunk city. It's
Yeah,
like
a
what
bunch of, like,
Walt Disney would have came over.
glass buildings, and it's not a city, but it's his lair. It's his hideout. It's Lovelace's, area. whatever you want to fucking call it.
It's Tomorrowland, Andrew. And then they were like, he's got a city. And then all of a sudden,
And this is where
we get our spider.
I started to really
John
drift.
Peters got his spider, and this is where it's introduced into the movie. It's a giant impressive looking mechanical spider, very steampunkish, not even like functional really. Like it moves like shit. It looks like it's about to collapse at any point in time. But the spider's carrying itself, or the spider's walking away, and they're like, well, you can't get through those canyons. And then Lovelace just pulls a lever, and these fucking huge missiles somehow he has missiles in 1865, and they blow up the canyon, and he's walking through it. And so now they've caught all the way up to the spider, only to have to catch up to the spider.
Wow, we've come all this way.
To go to another, it's just moving.
We've
them
come
from
all this
point-
way to catch up to a mechanical spider in the desert. Wow, who would have guessed that?
And then it cuts to Ulysses S. Grant on the Transcontinental Railway, and he's hammering the gold spike in there.
It was never actually hammered into the ground, by the way.
I know it wasn't. I know that was their only attempt at history in this movie. All the history is such horse shit. So,
did you notice that the flag? I saw this when I was watching on Amazon. And it put something up, and it was like, did you know that the flag in the background has 50 stars? And I was like, no way. And I went back and looked. The flag has 50 stars on it. At that time, it was a flag, but it had the circle stars, and there was only like 37.
yeah, like they didn't care. They did not care about this movie. $179 million budget. They couldn't even get the right. We
These
couldn't even
people
get the right
should
flag.
be tortured. They should be tortured, and they should face repercussions for the shit that they've put on the screen.
So they end up, basically, Ulysses S. Grant turns around, he hears all this like commotion, looks behind him, and sees this spider. Lovelace is showing these dignitaries this equipment that he has now, and this big spider, whatever. He ends up trying to capture Ulysses S. Grant, and then Gordon shows up.
Posed as him as well.
Don't know how they caught all the way up before the spider did, but poses as the president himself, so that they're getting in this like argument with Lovelace, and he's like, well, I'll take them both. And he ends up capturing them both. And Will Smith is climbing up the giant spider while they're being distracted, only to get to the top of the spider, get shot
Point blank.
and fall 100 feet, land on his back,
Maybe
and
more.
bounce. He bounced. He's dead. He is. I don't care if the gunshot killed him or not. He is dead on arrival.
But you know he's not.
So they capture the two presidents, and the spider gets away. And at this point, Kyle, the spider takes him where?
They go on a rampage throughout a couple towns to Silverado, and they start there's actually a Star Wars reference in there apparently.
Oh,
When they blow up the water tower, it says Kasdan something on it, which is a reference to Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote The Empire Strikes Back, which has the walkers in it, the 80s.
Did not catch that.
I didn't either.
We're grasping at straws on that one, I think.
How nice of them. How,
right? Cool. Wow, how prolific of them. Really great. So he's like, you don't surrender, I'm going to fucking like kill everybody. And Grant's like, bet, go for it. I don't give a shit. We're America, bitch. We're not surrendering. And while this is happening, Will Smith wakes up and he busts open his chest thing, and he's like, just kidding. I was wearing
chainmail, yeah.
Which, if
Gordon
he was
suited him
wearing,
up with.
that would have gone right through it. He would have been dead.
Right,
So,
and it did go through it. Like, if you look at the chainmail, the bullet went through it, and it still somehow
Guys, it doesn't
did
matter.
go through his
He
chest.
survived. He lived. He's alive. So, again, we can pontificate it all we want, but, like, he lived. So, suck it. I know you want him dead.
That was Andrew's favorite part of the movie.
Yeah. He Jon Snowed himself.
He did. But then Will Smith catches up, and we finally come to the climax of the movie.
Climax me, Daddy.
So Lovelace shows them that he's going to
Divvy up the United States.
back to the original conquerors, I guess. Great Britain will have the original 13 colonies.
Spain will get Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. Mexico gets Texas, Louisiana, Arizona, New Mexico. Actually,
Which
California.
Spain got screwed by not getting Georgia.
No, the Georgia. What? I guess Georgia was
a part of the British. So
Yeah.
so Spain, and then I think Spain got something else on the other side, and then Manhattan obviously was Loveless, and then there's what he called Loveless Land, which was just the West,
It was like anything west of
like Colorado.
It was Colorado, Utah, Nevada, Oregon, Montana, Idaho.
California.
It was northwest essentially.
Yeah. So
No California. California was Mexico, but
basically he is giving the United States back to those countries and
For
keeping
money
and keeping some himself. Now that he has a giant spider, that's his whole entire plan. And while he's giving this plan, he's getting ready to kill Gordon. Gordon's like, "Don't worry, I'm wearing the chainmail." He says that to Selma Hayek. Gets up to the front of the stage, and they're like, "Shoot him in the head." And I thought that was actually kind of funny because he just
That's
goes,
he said, "Shoot me in my heart which yearns and loves America so much. Shoot him in the head."
yeah, which I
that was really
actually
funny.
laughed at that part.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden in this entire business meeting / hostage takeover / dictator takeover, whatever you want to call it, everyone just stops because there's a belly dancer coming to the stage.
And the belly dancer immediately seduces Loveless, and he goes, "I love, Abonia. Why do you tease me so?" After she smacks the shit out of his face, and it turns around and goes over to Kevin Kline, and it goes, "It's me, it's Will Smith." Did you guess?
Jim
You would've
West.
thought.
Yeah, because he's the only black person on the spider. It's a black belly dancer, and
Fitting.
we
So
just
fitting.
have to point that out. So then they get to this point where he's belly dancing and distracting Loveless, and then his boobs start shooting off flames.
Yeah,
It was some sort of contraption or device that Gordon had made for that costume, and he didn't expect it. And yeah, it started shooting out flames from his breast area, if you will.
Breasticles.
And, yeah, sure, whatever. And then this is where I fell asleep. So take it away.
Again? You fell asleep again?
No, this is when I fell asleep. I was starting to doze. I think I woke myself up. I remember this stuff, hence why I was adding in things. This is where I literally.
Oh my God.
I remember waking up and him fighting some dude with like a cranium like skull up top, and
you didn't fall asleep for long. That's for sure.
okay.
Yeah, so
you're right there.
nothing
Okay,
really
cool.
happens.
Damn, I'm sad I didn't miss as much as I thought I did.
Will Smith throws the 8-ball from the pool table, which Gordon showed them earlier that the
Detective Gordon.
Artemis Gordon showed them earlier that the pool balls were either sleeping gas or whatever, and this one happened to be a bomb. It blows up. And so Loveless and his crew escaped the giant mechanical spider because this was like in some sort of like...
I thought this was the mechanical spider.
It was like
I'm
an
so
offshoot.
fucking confused.
Yeah, no, it was an offshoot of the mechanical spider because I got confused as well because the mechanical spider started leaving the area and a lot of people were left behind.
Whatever.
What was crazy about the situation is all these soldiers were scurrying out too, and no one was trying to like subdue Jim West or Gordon at this point. But anyway, the spider's getting away. And Jim West is like, "Hey, remember that flying invention you were going to do?" Cut to, they're in this little contraption a la the Great Mouse Detective and flying after the giant mechanical spider. I can't even believe I'm saying all that.
They started flying?
They flew.
Oh. Wow.
He invented flight.
Sad I missed that.
Yeah, and this is the one invention he gets to work, which is the great writing here. And Kyle, what happens when they catch up to the spider?
Out of everything we've learned over the past 30 to 40 years about the prowess of American ingenuity and air supremacy and air dominance when it comes to stealth and the importance of being quiet, not being seen, they don't do that, and they decide to start yelling and go, "Hey, we're fucking flying! You see who we are? Like, you can't fucking get us, fucking idiots!" And then they start fucking shooting at them with a Gatling gun, and they wreck the fucking wing, and they careen into the helm of the spider's head.
And they're captured again. I swear to God, like they get captured instantly. They catch up to the enemy, get captured. Catch up, get captured. And why the enemy just keeps leaving them behind instead of just killing them?
I just fucking shoot him in the head.
I know.
Just
It's like a fucking James Bond movie at this point, only like way worse.
Hey, you watch your mouth.
I would rather watch a James Bond movie, but it's
yeah, you would.
This is the comedic, like, dumb version of that, where they can't seem to kill them. So anyway, they get captured again, and then Will Smith's thrown in this like little dungeon area, I guess, and he has to fight a bunch of guys. He fights a guy with a bunch of swords, ends up throwing him out of the spider, and he's like, "No more Mr. Knife Guy." And it's like that. Those weren't knives; those were swords.
I was awake for that, but barely.
And then he fights the guy with the metal parts on him, and he somehow gets electrocuted. And did you know that those characters were not originally in the movie? They added them in there after they did the test audience, and they thought it was really weird that they were just fighting the femme fatales in his brood. They were like, why are they just fighting females? So they added those characters in there in a reshoot, which is probably an incredibly expensive reshoot.
Yes, that was part of what I was saying earlier. They just kept reshooting stuff.
Yeah,
and like,
you can tell.
Yeah, and then he electrocutes himself and dies, and I didn't even catch how he electrocuted himself.
I don't either. I thought you guys were going to catch
No,
that.
he just matter? He just like started punching the guy, and he was walking towards him, and he handed him the wrench, and then he just electrocutes himself and falls. And then while and Gordon's fighting the assistants up top, and then he just does an Olay, and the girl just runs off the spider and falls to her death. Which, keep in mind, Jim West fell off the spider earlier and didn't die or have any problems, so I don't. They're probably still alive. So. What happens next?
Loveless goes down to finish the job, or he gets pushed. He gets sent down. I forget exactly how he gets down there to the belly of the beast, where Will Smith is, and Will Smith gets the better of him, he thinks, and he's like, "I got you where you want you. This is where it really helps to have a set of legs underneath you." and all of a sudden, Loveless puts himself into another contraption, and his wheelchair now has 4 legs, and it's beating the shit out of Will Smith. And
because it's a mini version of the spider. And then Gordon has this like hidden gun that they were looking at. Tiny little gun.
22 rimfire.
And so he fires the gun, and Loveless goes, "After all that, you missed." And then he goes, "I didn't miss." And then they look down, and he shot out the hydraulic fluid in the spider. Why didn't he just shoot Loveless in the head?
Because I'm going to tell you right now. This isn't going to make sense because the movie doesn't make sense, but that would not have killed him, and he probably would have missed because those guns are meant to be shot like at point blank range. Those Derringers, they're not accurate at all.
But he had the pinpoint accuracy to shoot the hydraulic fluid,
which I don't think would have been pierced by that bullet.
It wouldn't. But we're just gonna whatever. We're gonna whatever that.
Suspend your disbelief
so
here.
I was like, if you have that kind of accuracy, just shoot him through the eyeball or something, and in this movie. But anyway, we didn't get that, and the movie continues on, and so Loveless is down on the ground now, crawling, and Will Smith, instead of just killing him, taking him hostage, beating the shit out of him, all these other options, monologues him until the point where Loveless.
What did Loveless say? He's like, "Your skin is as dark as the night sky, but inside you're yellow."
Yeah.
Like, what
Yeller.
the fuck? What the fuck?
He has to get more racist things in there.
Yeah.
And he's crawling back, and obviously he's crawling back to his wheelchair, which Will Smith knows he's a gadget expert. Why would you let him crawl back to his wheelchair?
Fucking yeet that motherfucker. Kick him off the ledge.
Or he's obviously crawling to his wheelchair, and Will Smith lets him get in the wheelchair and produce his shotgun that he shot Bloodbath McGrath with.
And he grazes his ass, doesn't he?
Yeah, grazes his ass.
All right, I'm wide awake.
And then shoots the piping or whatever, so steam starts going everywhere, and the spider loses control.
We're almost at the end, right?
Yes.
This is the end, essentially.
So the spider careens off the cliff, and Loveless and Jim West fly out, and Loveless is able to hold on with his wheelchair in an impossible way, with Jim West holding on to his neck only.
Mm-hmm. Which didn't kill him. Which didn't separate him.
Should have pulled him out of the wheelchair. I don't understand. What's happening here. And then he's like, if I wanted to really kill you, I'd pull this lever down and it'd be your demise, but I would die too. And Will Smith goes, I'll help you, and grabs the shit out of the lever. And the wheelchair still doesn't move. So they're just dangling here over this canyon. And Will Smith looks like he's barely holding on. You can tell this is some piss poor acting right here.
And writing. It's more writing.
So even if you're dangling over a green screen, you got to make it look like you're dangling for your life. And he's just barely holding on and just calmly talking to him. Well, at one point, what happens next, Kyle?
He's like, you won't do. This is where that yellow line comes in, Andrew, that you just said. He's like, you know,
that
you
is
back on the outside.
That's right.
But on the inside, you're yellow. And he's like, okay, bet. Fuck you. And he pulls the lever, and they fall. But Will Smith conveniently manipulates gravity and physics to make himself go right where the chain is, about 15 feet away, and about the course. He drops maybe 15 feet, and then he also travels 15 feet to his right in that time. So, realistic.
It looked like a curveball. It looked like somebody threw
dumb.
a curveball in Major League Baseball. And
so all he does is curveballs himself over to a fucking chain that was hanging off the side of the spider, and Loveless dies and he lives, and there you go.
And then they fast forward to the scene with the rail, and they actually
they actually get the golden spike in, and then
the golden spike in.
We find out Selma Hayek was actually lying to them. She wasn't searching for her father, who was a
Escobar.
It was her
husband.
And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, great reveal there. That really just threw me off. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So then we find that out, and then President Grant's like, "I'm taking your train, fellas. You took mine. I'm taking yours." And they're like, "Well, how will we get home?" And then that's the last shot.
He also appoints them as the first two members of the Secret Service.
Yes, glad you said that. No, so the Secret Service in that capacity wasn't established until 1901, after the assassination of, was it McKinley?
McKinley, yeah.
Yeah, as the protective service. Before that, it was just counterfeiters.
Yeah, they were part of the Department of Treasury.
Yeah.
Yep.
They didn't do any protection of physical bodies. It was all about snuffing out counterfeitism and counterfeitism? Is that the word?
Counterfeitism.
Yeah.
Counterfeitism.
Yeah.
In this movie, it was counterfeitism.
And that is the end of it, isn't it? That's the fucking.
Yep.
We can stop talking about the plot.
We see them go into the sunset on the spider. They commandeer the spider.
This movie was like a weird dream. Like, when you wake up and it's like very vivid, and you're like, wait, I pulled out a gun and it shot out paper towel rolls. Like, what? That's what this was. It didn't make any fucking sense.
And here's the thing: is when they walk off into the sunset, they use the spider. So my moral of the story is the U.S. now has a spider weapon.
And they're going to dominate the rest of the world.
And they're going to go...
Fuck you, Canada.
And they're going to go after Spain and Britain after the shit that they were talking on the spider.
Hell
when
yeah.
They were trying to sell some of the country.
Yeah, they are.
So are we just going to forget about those other countries wanting... whatever. Credits roll. That's it. That's the Wild Wild West. And it was a wild, wild dump.
Woo! Yeah, really glad we got through that and talked it out, talked it through. It was very therapeutic.
Kyle, what do you think of this movie now as an adult versus when you were a kid?
The older we get, the more real things get, and the less real these kind of stories become. And this was about as unrealistic as it comes. Most of the stuff in this was just fabricated nonsense and very vapid storytelling that didn't really have any basis of anything. It just kind of like the story was just like, we're going to pick up and place the story here. This exposition happens here. There was no flow to the movie. There was no like if this then that. It was very fabricated. I don't think it did a good job of telling the story. I think it was just things happen in this movie that are entertaining. I would not call it a movie in terms of like The Empire Strikes Back or Schindler's List.
I hope
or
not.
Saving Private Ryan.
I hope not.
It's not anywhere near a movie of that, or even like Austin Powers. Let's do something more in the same vein of like the comedic. Austin Powers has more to it than this does.
The Mummy has more to it than this. By far and away.
There's so many other things out there that have more going on than this, and it was just a very poorly thought out money grab that didn't really grab any money and just kind of wasted money in the end. So as an adult, yeah, no.
I agree. As a kid that liked this movie, as an adult, it is. I mean, I was telling Andrew, I put this up there with Godzilla and Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
Wow, would you really?
I would.
I'm not gonna go that far, but I don't
really
blame
bad.
you for that.
It was really bad.
I would say third. I would say 3 Wild Wild West, 2 Godzilla, 1 Batman and Robin.
I had a little bit more fun with Batman and Robin because of it was so bad. It was kind of funny. This movie, I was just eye rolling the whole time. There's maybe a couple of times where I laughed. The action sucked. The
action was not very good.
The set pieces kind of sucked for a movie with $179 million in budget. They all looked the same. It was either desert or it was a plantation.
Steampunk bullshit.
Yeah, and I do like the gadgets enough. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I like the steampunk style of this story we're trying to tell. But it all fell flat, and the steampunk gadgets made everybody look dumb. The inventors looked dumb. Our heroes were bumbling idiots that had no redeeming qualities.
Ineffective.
This movie did not pass the Bechdel test. This movie is racist.
So I obviously had never seen it, and I expected it to be, Wild Wild West. I thought it was all about like cowboys and Indians, and literally there's moments there in the desert, but it's not really a Western at all. There's nothing wild. There's nothing about the Wild West in this. It's more in the South than it is even the West.
Well, and I do the Jules Verne style steampunk in the West is a thing.
This didn't capture it.
No, it did not capture it at all. Like for any cool gadget you get a bumbling idiot behind it. They had gadgets just to have gadgets. It almost felt like the old Mission Impossible. Inspector Gadget. Or Mission Impossible, the TV show where it was really campy, where it's just like there's a gadget for everything. Most of them don't work or they blow up in your face. And it's just like, what kind of cool gadget can I make? And that's all this movie was.
It's hard to make a movie, and I can never shit on someone too much for putting together a major film, but it makes me mad that people were given creative rights and creative freedoms to create this, and it's just
this is one of those movies where you probably had so many hands in the pot that you had 16,000 visions going through, and none of them were linear. And that happens to a lot of those big budget movies from the 90s where it's either reshoots or it's like, I didn't like this. Well, this producer didn't like this. It had John Peters on it, which I told you the story with him and Kevin Smith. John Peters didn't know what he wanted at any point in time on any movie he was on. I know he did Rain Man and I know he did Batman, but he's also done other stinkers just like Wild Wild West where it just feels like everything's kind of thrown in the wall. Wouldn't this be cool? Wouldn't this be cool? Kids, if you're out there writing a script, it shouldn't be, wouldn't this be cool? You better learn how to tell a story and get your audience connected to that story. If you can't do that, it doesn't matter what cool thing you come up with. And this is one of those movies. Yes, Mechanical Spider is pretty cool in the West. Doesn't fit in here. Doesn't work. This movie sucks.
I don't even think Mechanical Spider in the West is a cool concept, so fuck that.
I agree.
Just throw that out. Throw it out. Start afresh and pretend you didn't think about that.
Oh, man. I wish I didn't. So, anyway.
Does this movie hold up?
Yeah. Kyle, start with you. Does this movie hold up?
Quickly,
I think we already know
the answers.
No.
Andrew.
No.
This movie definitely does not hold up. The last few episodes we've had some sort of dissent, I guess, but like not this one.
No. I hadn't seen it until, a couple hours ago. I wish I'd never watched it. Like I legitimately thought it was a waste of time.
I wish I had the Jim West glasses from when I was a kid so I can throw them on the ground and smash them right now out of anger.
The Jim West abortion
glasses. Cool.
I don't even want to give this movie a score, honestly.
1.8.
I was gonna say I'm put it in the 4s. I'll do 4.4.
I was gonna say 4.3.
It's 4.9 on IMDb, so it is pretty low.
It's
4.9.
I remember, like I said, I remember this movie being a bomb and everyone hating it. Even Kevin Smith talked about it in his interview where he said, "This is one of the biggest pieces of shit I've seen." So there you go.
Yeah.
You know, that about wraps it up. You know what we do here? We reach into your childhood nostalgia, pull the movies from your past out. Today, we scuttled into your mind, found Wild Wild West, and we're going to remove that for you and throw it in the trash, and you'll thank us later. Next week's a big episode, right, Kyle?
Oh, yeah, baby.
Yeah, we're looking at Men in Black. It's been a year. Andrew, it's our birthday.
How exciting.
Yeah.
1 year old?
And we're going to tell you the story about our first failed podcast episode, Men in Black, and we're going to get to redo it. So we'll see you next week for Men in Black.